Welcome back to 755 Forever. I'm David O'Brien, Braves writer at The Athletic. And I'm with my co-host, as usual, former Braves reliever Eric O'Flaherty. What's going on, Eric?
What's up, Dave? Are you down in Florida?
Down in Florida, we got the Braves day off. They had 2 days off this spring.
Two.
Yeah, it never used to get more than one,
Yeah.
ever. But yeah, 2 days off. And man, we got lucky because the weather has gotten really steamy down here, like 85 and really humid. And today, for whatever, a front went through last night, got up this morning, and it was like 65 and drier and breezy. It felt great, like it did in the
Yeah.
first couple of weeks of spring training. So we got lucky for a day off. It's going to get steamy again. But anyway, for a day off, it's pretty busy because the Braves, they do the thing now with opening day starters where MLB Network has made it programming, like they've made everything programming. When they name the finalists for awards, the finalists have a show, then the awards show the next week. Anyway, so now they do a show. They started it last year, or the year before, where they announced the opening day starters on the show, the teams that haven't already announced it. And the Braves and Phillies both did theirs today. I think some people were surprised by the Braves. I was not. Spencer Strider will be starting for the Braves, making his first opening day start, and he will be starting against Zach Wheeler. And man, you talk about a matchup. I think that's the best opening day matchup in baseball because I think those two have a real good shot of being 1-2 in the Cy Young in either order in the NL.
I wonder if we're biased, because that's the matchup I'm looking forward to the most. And I just feel like that Braves Phillies rivalry right now is the best thing going. And there's been those 2 years of those play of the playoff knockouts and early exit by the
Yeah.
Braves, and the Braves have been so damn good for however many years that I was the most excited about that matchup in the postseason, and I'm just as excited about it for opening day. But I wonder if the rest of baseball looks at it the same as we do.
I think they do. I think because the Braves are now a glamour team, they have
Yeah.
become so in the last 4 or 5 years. So like the team this year, everybody's got them rated number one pretty much in their power rankings. So it's like Braves and Dodgers, are kind of
Yeah.
above everybody as far as just power and across the board performance. Good teams. And the Phillies, though, have become a sexy team too, with getting to the World Series and then last year, beating the Braves again and having Bryce Harper, having a couple of great pitchers. So they've become a marquee team too, whereas the Mets have slipped back, obviously. And the Yankees are kind of every year, everybody's getting sick of the Yankees being overhyped and never kind
Yeah.
of living up to it. So I think right now it's the Dodgers and the Braves are viewed as the best teams, but the rivalry, because they only play the Dodgers 2 series a year, I think the best rivalry probably is either Dodgers and Giants, but the Giants haven't been very good, to be a
Yeah.
great rival. But the Phillies and the Braves, those games are great now. Like every
Yeah.
series, it seems like those games are great.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, it's just they're games I look forward to watching, and Phillies definitely have a level of swag that
Yeah.
makes them interesting too. And like Harper being on there, and there's two
Oh,
starting pitchers up front. I mean, it's good matchup.
and their home field. I mean, that's become
Yeah.
such a big factor in big games, but especially in the postseason. Really nothing quite like it. I mean, Truist Park's a great atmosphere. Dodger Stadium's a great atmosphere. Houston's a great atmosphere. But right now, Philly, that place for the playoffs is kind of the next level as far as just sheer volume and
Yeah.
rowdy.
I can't even
Uh,
imagine because, well, I guess they were pretty good when I came over to Atlanta, but it just seems like it's on another level since when I was with the Braves playing there. The only stadium I could compare it to is the old Yankee Stadium.
yeah.
That place
Yeah, the
used to
old
be
one.
rowdy.
Because
Yeah.
they used to have leather lung Dennisons at the old place, but they
Yeah.
priced them out at the new
Yep.
place. The
Yep.
new place is so nice. They
It's
raised
not
the
the
price
same.
on all the tickets and made everything suites down low. And so you don't have the blue collar fans. Those are guys, those people are watching on TV now for the most
Yeah.
part. Or
It's
they're so
PG.
high up you can't hear them.
Yeah, and the stadium used to have a different layout,
Yeah,
those old bowls that just sat right on top of you. The
right.
stairs were a lot steeper. The stadiums sit back farther now, but those old stadiums, I remember looking straight up in Yankee Stadium and you just feel like, I mean, there's 50,000 in there, but it felt like 350.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was all you could see every direction was fans.
Yeah, the footprint on the new one is massive. It's big.
Yeah.
Concourses are huge. It just doesn't have any of the character the old one did, or the
Or the
or the
dirt and the
intimidation
grime.
factor. No,
Yeah.
yeah. And the fans just aren't as loud. It's so expensive. The tickets are so expensive that you don't get that.
Yeah,
you
these
know.
people have jobs to lose if they, they get a DUI on the drive home. Those
Yeah,
old fans, man, they were rowdy.
yeah, like yeah, you were talking about that stadium. Tiger Stadium was like that. The old Tiger
Yeah.
Stadium was like that. I mean, there were a few of them that were like that, was straight, kind of straight up and much closer to the field and on
Hmm.
the upper decks. But anyway, um, getting back to Strider, if ever the typical social media response has been, "No, that's it. Freed's gone." I don't think that's whether they were going to sign Freed or not. This is not any indication of that at all. What this is an indication of, why wouldn't you start Spencer Strider? Maybe it's harder to make that decision if Freed pitches a full season last year, starts the first game of the postseason for you, but he didn't. He missed over half the season last year with injuries. Strider started game one of the postseason. Strider was their best pitcher last year, led the majors in strikeouts. But here's the even bigger factor. You want to win opening day. I mean,
Yeah.
if you lose, it's not a big deal, but you're on the road at Philly. You want
Yep.
to win and make that statement, win the series. You got the next day off, especially because they have that built-in rain out day. So if you have a chance, I mean, if it's just a case of this pitcher or that, and one of them gives you a lot better odds, why wouldn't you? Strider against the Phillies is as dominant in regular season play so far as any pitcher in baseball is against any team right now.
Yep.
Against the Phillies, Strider is 8-0 with a 1.90 ERA in 8 regular season games, including 7 starts. 3 starts at Philadelphia, 3-0 with a 1.42 ERA. Why wouldn't you want to start that guy in the first game and get off to a big start? Especially he's had the best spring of anybody too.
Yeah, I mean, I think starting game one is a pretty telltale sign, but he's also, I mean, it's not like it's a knock on Max, but he's just kind of taken that ace role. He's been healthy and he's been putting up numbers for a couple years. Um,
Yeah.
it did used to go to, I mean, it used to go not strictly, but a lot, tenure mattered a lot on who was getting that ball opening day. But I don't
Right.
see the Braves, they just don't seem to be making moves based on emotions or anything like that. I mean,
Right.
it seems like it's pretty cut and dry with the decisions they make these days. Even bringing in Duvall, I mean, they are putting the best team out there and they're putting their best foot forward. And if you don't like it, sorry, but this is our guy and this gives us the best chance to win. And it just seems like it's cut and dry like that.
Yeah. Alex and Snit both, I agree. They've gotten into the mode of, instead of just going with tradition and doing the way things, they're going with what gives them the best chance to win.
Every
And
day.
this isn't, nobody could look at this as a slap in the face of Max Fried, who started the last 3 opening days, yes. But this is not just another pitcher coming along.
Mhm.
Spencer Strider
He's a
is
force.
is arguably the most dominant young pitcher in baseball.
Yeah.
The only guy you could look at right now and say maybe is on his level is a prime Verlander when he gets healthy again. DeGrom, until he shows he can do it again,
Yeah.
he's taken over. He's taken that baton from DeGrom as far as sheer dominance. And
Yeah,
you
he's
want to
starting
run
game
a guy
one
like that
for
out.
anybody, I would think. I mean, I think he's every team's opening day starter if they got him.
Exactly. You got a guy like that. You want to go out and let him shove on opening day.
Yeah.
Get fit and the way he's pitched this spring, how deep he's gotten, 90 pitches last outing. This is a guy that could go out and strike out 14, 15 guys on opening day. And if you could do that, and
Sets a
then you
tone.
got Freed coming in day 2, and Charlie or Chris Sale coming in game 3. Probably, I would think Sale go with the 2 lefties, against the Phillies.
Yeah.
Gives you a real good chance to win the series. And hey, how about if you swept the series to
Yeah.
start the year? I mean, that's no small feat. Then you go to the White Sox. Obviously, you're going to go up there looking to win no less than 2 out of 3 and have a really hell of an opening trip. So anyway, they announced that today. Max, they have not said what the order is after that, but I would certainly think Max Fried gets game 2. And then I would tend to think it's Chris Sale in game 3, but you never know how they're going to do it with lefties, righties, and all that. But
Unless
to
you
me,
want to give him a shot to pitch in Chicago.
yeah, there's that. There's that. But that people say, what, you want to split the lefties up. To me, in under normal circumstances, I could see that. But these two particular lefties are so different. I mean, they couldn't be much more different than they are with their deliveries, the repertoires, all that. So I don't know that that's that big a factor. And I kind of want two lefties facing the Phillies.
Schwarber, Stott, Harper. Yeah, I mean, I would go lefty lefty if I could too.
Yeah, I mean, man, think about how much different Fried is from Sale. The
It's not.
deliveries.
Yeah, I mean, it's a completely different angle. Max is pretty close to over the top, and he's working the 12-6 curveball, and then you got Sale working side to side, and totally different arm angles, totally different angles that the ball's getting delivered on too. So I wouldn't think, I think that the times that teams avoid that is if you had two sinker slider righties in your lineup, and you don't want to give a team 2 days in a row to try to poke sinkers the other way or handle that pitch. But two lefties that throw completely different, and they're both really good lefties. This isn't your number 4, number 5. They're throwing similar things. These are two possible aces.
Right, right. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they do it. And you got a 6-game opening trip. So then you look at who's going to get start if it's a big deal, the home opener, game 7. So that could be in that if they go with Fried in game 2. The Braves they usually don't skip people. They give them the extra rest. I don't know if that would matter coming out of the gate, but they're not going to skip Chris Sale or Charlie Morton coming out of the gate, unless they don't think Charlie is built up enough because he hadn't pitched a lot this spring, but they haven't mentioned that yet. But in
That's
that
a
event,
tough spot to put a pitcher in. Pitching your last game of spring and then getting skipped in the
right, exactly.
rotation to start the season. I wouldn't want to do that.
I don't think they do that. I can't see them doing that. So you might have Chris Sale pitching, Chris Sale or Charlie Martin starting the home opener. So, but we'll see. You mentioned earlier. Oh, just to follow up on Strider, what he's done this spring, and for those who maybe haven't paid real close attention to it, he's the only pitcher who's pitched as many as 14 innings this spring in the majors without giving up a run. He's allowed 11 hits, 7 walks with 29 strikeouts in 18 2/3 innings. That's the most innings of any pitcher and the most Ks. Nobody else is in Florida or Arizona has more than 21 strikeouts. So he's just kept up what he's done the last 2 years in a regular season. Curveball has been terrific. I mean, for a pitch, he's just breaking out. He's throwing it. He lands it for strikes. He's not just throwing it, not having any idea where it's going. It's not just a chase pitch. I mean, he's throwing that thing, man. He knows where it's going. It's going to be, I think, a big part of his repertoire. And the other news was they made it official yesterday. Snip made it official that Ronaldo Lopez is going to be the number 5 starter. I know a lot of people kind of doubted them when they said they were going to get him stretched out to start after signing that 3-year, $30 million deal. People thought he's going to be in the bullpen. They're just saying that. But if you think about it, if they had any intention of using him in both roles, this is the way to go for a guy like him, because I know while Strider started out in the bullpen 2 years ago, then they moved him to the rotation 2 months in. Strider's not very typical, and they also had to build Strider back up. He went like 3 or 4 innings first start, then 5. With most pitchers, they're going to want to go the other way. If you're going to use him as a starter at all, do it early. Then you can decide if you want to move him to the pen. This year, their bullpen is so deep that this made sense. And if Lopez struggles or whatever is in the rotation, or they need him in the pen, they can move him down there a month from now or 2 months from now, mid-season.
Well, so way easier to transition.
Yeah, because he's
you
stretched
can't go
out
from throwing an inning at a time to throwing 5 or 6, but you can go from 5 or 6 to throwing an inning or 2 overnight. It's easy, and you want to get that answer. You want to get that answer of, a guy's got his potential, and you sign him. It's like you want to know. You got to get that answer of where this guy has the most value. There's a reason starters get paid way more, because they're more valuable. So it's not like if this year didn't work out, but he showed some signs, and then you get down to crunch time and you move him out of the pen, he can't try to start again next year. But you want to start getting the answer on this thing as soon as possible so you can plan for it and get the most value out of the time that you have him.
And he's really looked good as the spring has worn on too. He felt like his legs were heavy in a really hot, humid game. One start ago, like a week ago. Then he came back and threw in a really hot day 2 days ago. Here and threw 5 innings and said he felt great. So he's already conditioning, building up towards that. He's a big guy, not fat. He's just big. He's a big guy, and he felt a lot better. Said his legs felt good. And he also hit 96, whereas he was throwing mostly 93, 94, 90, 95 a little bit early. And people were wondering, where's the velo? He had 96 several pitches the other day, which is still a couple below his 98 to 100 as a reliever. But he's trying to, he said there's a lot of different circumstances. I'm getting used to starting again, what kind of pace I can go at. And it's spring training. Remember, not everybody comes in throwing like Strider. A lot of guys have to build back up to it, especially some relievers.
Yeah, I
Adelaide.
never had my velocity in spring training. I was always 87 to 91. And then something clicks on opening day. You know, you've gotten a month and a half to throw, but sometimes my velocity wouldn't peak until June or July. A starter is different. You know, you're throwing a lot more, so the recovery is different. But I never really sweat spring training velocity at all. You already know what's in the tank. You know, you
Yeah,
don't go from, unless you're hurt, you don't go from
right.
throwing 99 or having 99, you know, at your fingertips to all of a sudden it's just gone. Unless you're, you know, mid to late 30s or you have some kind of injury you're hiding, then you worry about it. But a lot of guys transitioning to starting, you know, actually take it serious, and that's a good sign. He's not just trying to blow people's doors off for 3 or 4 innings. The guy wants to be a starter, and he's trying to make it work and save his arm.
Yeah. He's pitched really well this spring. And the other thing is Bryce Elder kind of made the decision easy by struggling this spring. I mean, he's had a couple of bad starts. And I think the Braves looked at as that as, you know what, we need Bryce to go back down, get his confidence back, dominate in AAA. Then when he's ready, if we need him, if you have an injury, but it just didn't make any sense. If they're going to come into spring training, you're going to say it's a competition for the fifth starter. For one guy to have a 2-something ERA, the other guy to have an 8-something ERA and a huge whip, to then go, you know what,
Making
though, we're going to go with that guy anyway. I mean, that wouldn't make any sense. So, and they had already optioned the two young kids, Waldrop and Smith Shaver. I thought Smith Shaver really looked good. I know his numbers were not good at all, but I thought he really looked good, especially in his first few starts. His last couple starts against the Yankees, I thought he looked great for 4 innings, and then he was charged with like 3 runs that got 2 or 3 runs that he left on base that scored against a reliever. But early on, he was really looking good, striking out guys with his changeup. I thought he's made significant strides, even if the numbers don't say it. I really did. And Waldrop, that kid's going to be great. I really think he's going to be a damn good pitcher. But it's just they weren't going to break camp with him. They
No, and you
optioned
got
him
to
down.
keep
So
getting your innings.
yeah,
You got to build guys up.
yeah, he's barely pitched in the minors. I mean, made 8 starts last year after he got drafted. So, but those are two options. Ian Anderson's going to be another one at midseason. Inoa just made a spring debut with 1 inning 3 days ago, so he wasn't an option, but he's going to be. But there are 4 guys that you're looking at, 5 guys, including Bryce Elder, Ian Anderson, Inoa, and the 2 kids. So that's 5 guys, and the Braves have basically gone with about 11 starters in recent years. Last year, 13, but because they like to bring kids up and give guys extra rest whenever they can. Anybody sore just needs extra rest. That's 5 guys right there that give you more depth than almost any organization can point to.
Normally, you're looking at 1 or 2 guys that you might trust, you know, or feel
Yeah.
good about. But I mean, I feel Elder is an example of what almost every major leaguer is scared of until they get to arbitration. You know, I mean, it takes. He had a great year last year. It takes a couple bad months and a bad spring, and all of a sudden you're back in AAA. That's
Yeah.
why for me personally, I didn't have I had some good seasons, but I didn't start having great seasons until I had guaranteed money and a guaranteed job.
Yeah.
Because that pressure can build, and
Yeah.
it's always in the back of your mind. Like if I have a bad spring or if I don't do this, you know, a lot of it's your perspective and how you channel that. But your career is so fragile. You know, you go down to AAA and struggle. It's like I might never see the
Yeah.
big leagues again. And a year ago, you know, or 10 months ago, he's looking at like, shoot, I might make the All-Star team.
Yeah.
Things like that. It's just crazy how
And he
fragile
did.
the career can be and how up and down everything can be. But I have confidence in him that he'll figure out whatever's going wrong for him. And I don't think what he did last year was a fluke.
Yeah.
I think he just maybe got tired.
You can't do it with smoke and mirrors for half a season against big
No,
league competition.
no,
And I didn't even mention Winans and Vines. That's 2 more. I mean, those guys
no.
pitched well last year when they had the opportunity.
Yep.
So I mean, that's 7 guys in addition to the 5 you've got up here.
Yep.
7 more guys.
It's a lot of
So
depth.
yeah, if you don't trade one of them, there's a lot of teams looking for a starter, and any of those 7 could pitch for a lot of teams. But I think going back to Bryce Elder, to me, he's not a spring training pitcher. To me, he's a guy that needs to be on a manicured field with a good defense behind him, all 9 innings, pitching, has his location down pinpoint because he's not a guy that does it with stuff. Like last year, he got optioned right about now, earlier than this, and opens the season as the opening day starter in AAA. I just don't think he's the kind that's going to come in and impress in spring training. He's going to get tons of ground balls if he's on his game, his location's good. And if it's not, pitching against a bunch of minor leaguers and backups, fighting for spots. I just don't think spring training he's going to shine. A guy like him is going to shine in spring training typically.
It's definitely, I mean, one thing I noticed is you almost want to, like, ideally, you don't want to be tired. You don't want your arm to be dead and dragging, but you also don't want it to be too fresh when you're throwing a sinker, because you can do this thing where you throw through the sink. You can have your arm speed to a point when your arm's fresh where you're almost getting too much carry on the ball, and the ball doesn't have time to kind of die and fade away. I was at my best when my arm was a little tired. And that's why I love throwing every day, because when I would feel good, the ball wouldn't move as much because it would carry through the sink. And you want to be, as a sinker, I think like the best time of year is like middle of the season. You kind of, you've been throwing for long enough that your arm's not fresh anymore, but it's also not dead. I think that's when he'll shine.
Before I forget, check out merchandise if you haven't done so already on our site, 755 Forever, 755forever.com. You can find our merch on there and some other stuff. And if you want to support the podcast, you can click on the store, look for that. You can subscribe. We got the coffee thing going with that dude up in North Carolina. Good stuff, man. I had some of it. Really good. That coffee, Van Gogh. Good stuff. And also, we're going to have an opening day, or we're planning to have an opening day special live on YouTube that night. It's going to be late. It's not going to be like, right after the game, but it's going to be later that night. And we'll talk about how opening day went up in Philly, probably about 9 or 10 o'clock that night. But we'll let you know between now and then about that. Other roster decision that was the roster is all but set now, and the Braves have done this. This is like earlier than ever. I thought it was going to come down. A couple of them were going to come down to the end, but
it always comes down to like the last day.
And usually, I think this team, we came in, there were only a couple of spots that were really up for grabs, and they really don't see any reason to kind of BS. They see what they want to see. They've made their decision, so why let it drag out? And they don't worry so much about a guy getting hurt and then having to tell the next guy, oh, no, you were our guy all along. They don't really worry about that as much as maybe they did in the past, which it's a little anal to think about that think about it that way. And they Forrest Wall played so well this spring that even if maybe somebody would think, I thought maybe they'd go with a second infielder just because on the really remote chance you lose both of your middle infielders in a game and you have to get through that. You got Guillorme as your only other backup middle infielder. So you can move Riley over to short. He can handle short, no problem, but you're going to have somebody filling at third. But so that's why I was thinking maybe they'd go with Fletcher. They're already paying him $6 million, so why not have him and Guillorme? But you know what they looked at it as? Forrest Wall came in great shape, worked on his swing with a couple of Braves minor league coaches that went down to his home in Florida this winter. Came in and played well since the first day of spring training. Earned it with his defense and especially his hitting. And he gives you that speed element that if you don't have him on the team, if you have Fletcher with Guillorme, you're not going to have that pinch runner to use in that, which that might have that. There's a lot better chance of that happening if you think about it than two middle infielders getting hurt in the same game. You needing a pinch run for like Matt Olson in the 9th inning of a close game, or Arcia, who's really slow, or one of your catchers. You want a pinch run. There's more of a chance of that happening than there is losing both the middle infielders. You lose both middle infielders, you have to get through one game and you bring one up the next day from AAA. Yeah. So they went with Forrest Wall, even after getting Duvall. So that gives them 5 outfielders. Forrest Wall is not going to get any ABs unless somebody gets hurt or Kellen just keeps falling on his face like he has this spring. But he's not going to play center or right unless Harris or Acuna is dog tired and needs a rest day one day or is nicked up. But Forrest Wall, he's 28. They're not looking at it as he's 24. We need him to keep getting ABs. They'll look at it as this kid's earning this right now, and he wants to be here. He doesn't want to be in AAA.
Yeah, and his role is probably pretty set. Like this is, unless he, gets a few at bats and does some stuff, and then somebody gets hurt and he winds up going off with his playing time. I mean, this is probably the career he's looking at. So it's not a big a deal to have him sitting on the bench versus a young guy that you got your whole career ahead of you. We want to see if you, what you turn into. Like with Wall, you're probably seeing what you're going to get.
Yeah. And he gives you a legit option too. If Harris needs a day off, he gets nicked up, it's a little sore. This guy can play center and play it well.
Yeah, he's
So
fast.
he could play a day or two games and you don't have to make a roster move and all that stuff. So it does make some sense in that regard. And Duvall is gonna platoon with Kelnick. We didn't even talk about Duvall. They signed Duvall. And that made a lot of people happy because Braves fans love him, teammates love him, coaches love him, and they got him. Let's face it, they got him for a steal. Duvall was upset with what's happened with free agency, and I don't blame him. A guy like him who made $7 million last year and had a hell of a year with the Red Sox. He got hurt in this part of the year, missed half the year, but his numbers last year with the Red Sox, look at his OPS, the home runs, and the games that he played. He was really good. And he went from making $7 million last year to making $3 million this year. I know he's 35, but he could still play.
Yeah, that's like, it's really tough when you start putting on getting up there in years a little bit, but 247 with 21 and 58 ribbies and
that OPS.
300 at bats. And, yeah, 830 OPS. I mean, that used to get you a 3 or 4 year deal to wrap your career up, at least 3. 3 years at 10 a pop.
What was that, 119 or something? The OPS plus?
119. Yeah. That used to get you a multi-year deal. Yeah. At 8 to 12. So, something like that.
On top of being intangibles off the scale. Yeah. I mean, wherever he's been, loved. Yeah. Everybody loves this kid. This guy. He's not a kid. So that was a great pickup for the Braves. I mean, and nobody's gonna feel sorry for Adam Duvall making $3 million, but it's just that.
What did he say? I didn't see his comments.
He just said free agency's not in a good place, but he's not the only one to say that. Look at all the guys that were still out there unsigned. The reigning Cy Young Award winner didn't sign until yesterday.
Got a
2-year deal.
Winning the Cy Young at 31.
Yes, and we thought he got the AAV that we figured he'd get, 31, I think, million AAV. But for 2 years instead of 5, which is what I'm sure he wanted 5 or 6 years, and probably would have got a couple of years ago. Yeah. I know he's got a lot of walks and all that, but this is a 2-time Cy Young Award winner and his prime and had to settle for a 2-year deal. But yeah, Duvall said, and he's not wrong. He said that teams are focusing now with analytics. Teams are focusing a lot more on age than they ever did before, and how age can override things like experience and proven track record in big games, which he's done in a Grand Slam, Game 5 of the World Series, intangible stuff that we talked about. A lot of teams, and I talked to Charlie Morton about this too. Charlie said the same thing. He goes, it's a lot easier for teams to make decisions when they've got this to fall back on. They cover their ass by saying, we're pointing to this, this, and this, instead of when you're doing it for a guy for intangible reasons who did this in a big game or whatever, and they falls on his face. You can't justify it. It's a lot easier to make these decisions based on algorithms, analytics, and that kind of thing. So a 35-year-old guy who's maybe analytically some things are a little weak is going to pay. He's not going to get the money that he would have got years ago. He's got to settle for a 1-year deal for $3 million 2 weeks before the end of camp.
I do think that they're a little behind on some of that because guys are taking care of themselves differently now. Like a lot of these deals that look bad were signed with an era of players that didn't do all the stuff guys do now. I mean, there's so much more available to you. Like, look at Verlander. Nobody thought he'd be as good as he has been for as long as he's been. And I'm sure if he had bad seasons at the wrong time or something, he might have had to sign these 1-year deals too. But you guys are able to feel good way longer than they were used to. So it could swing back around if more and more of these guys keep performing. But I mean, there's this thing everybody talks about. It's like all those 7, 8, 9-year deals guys were signing when they were 31, 32, 33, and everybody's watching. None of them work out right now. Barely any of them work. So I think teams are kind of shying away from that. But it could change to the point where 35 is not looked at as that old anymore.
Yeah, there should be a happy medium. I mean, you don't have to
Yeah,
go 7 years like a ridiculous contract with
yeah,
a guy's going to be 40 at the end of the deal.
yeah.
But a guy like him, you would have thought could have got, if not more
Couple
years, if not 2 years, then at least
more
double that
money.
salary, at least as
Yeah,
much money as he made last year when he
yeah.
performed, when he outperformed his contract, even though he
That's
missed half the
like
season.
that's like that deal 1 year 3 is like a middle reliever, like a Scott Lineberg
Yeah,
deal. You know, somebody
yeah.
that's been bouncing around. You know, he's going to be able to show up every day and give you some innings and get you out of some jams. But 240 with 20 something home runs. I mean, that used to get you paid a little bit.
And not a DH. Still plays a
No,
solid outfield. I
yeah,
mean, Fletcher on this team with that deal that he signed with the Angels, granted, it was a bad deal. That Angels GM screwed up a lot of them. But he's making $6 million this year and 6.25, I think, next year. Fletcher,
yeah,
he's going to
yeah,
AAA. He's making
yeah.
twice what Adam Duvall's making this year.
I made 6 as a reliever one season. You know, I mean,
Yeah. I mean,
it's
35.
free
It's
agency's ugly right now.
it's ironic because the game is skewing younger and younger because of analytics, because they're cheaper. Those players are cheaper. You get them signing long-term deals while they're before they get arbitration, like the Braves did. So the game's skewing younger and younger. And guys are in better shape than they've ever been later in their careers because
Yep.
of what you said, training tables and equipment and going to labs in the offseason, pitching labs and hitting labs. And you know, so they're able to play longer than ever.
Yep.
But the game is skewing younger and younger. I mean,
Well, I
Chipper
mean,
won a
the
batting title in his after
36,
older. Yeah.
37. Yeah. I think too, you know, another thing that's terrible for player contracts is every single time a rebuild works out. Like that's the greatest. I'm not going to call it a con because sometimes the rebuilds do, but there's other organizations you can look at where they've been rebuilding for 10 years.
Yeah.
But every time one of these works out, you have more teams that are able to convince their fan base to be patient. So you don't have a team that's going to be okay this year competing for Adam Duvall. They're not interested. So you only have a select number of teams that are trying to win now, signing these older players. Versus back in the day, there was definitely some pressure. Even if you might be the third best team in your division, there was some pressure to try to be better and compete and do something.
Yeah.
And now you have, I don't know what percent it is, but it seems like there's 2 teams in every division that have already thrown in the towel on this season. So you multiply that, and now we're looking at you got 12, 13 teams that have no interest in any free agent. So it just makes free agency a lot tougher for guys, especially guys like Duvall.
You said what his overall numbers were last year. He started out the year. He was on fire before he got hurt, before he hurt that wrist again. He's hurt the wrist a few times. A lot of times he goes down, tries to make a slide and catch, and his glove catches, and now that wrist is, you know, prone to getting injured again when he's hurt it so many times. But he started out last year. He had 455 with 10 extra base hits, 4 homers, 14 RBIs in his first 8 games. And he was on fire, and that's when he got hurt. Said he texted him at that time, said, "I feel so bad for you, man, because you've been playing so well." So then he missed 2 months and came back and still played well. But remember what he did in 21 when he came with his second stint with the Braves when they got him from the Miami at the trade deadline, when Alex made all those moves at the deadline to rebuild the entire outfield. He came in at the deadline and 55 games for the Braves in the regular season, had 16 homers and 45 RBIs in 21 for the World Series championship team. Finished that year with 38 homers and 113 ribbies. Led the league in RBIs, 113 ribbies. That's 2021, man. Not that long ago. Then he had 3 homers, 10 RBIs in 16 postseason games, including 2 in the World Series, grand slam in Game 5.
Yeah, I mean, he can carry you. Yeah, we've seen it. I also wonder, you know, like if there's a lot of uncertainty if this TV money is going to keep coming in, because a lot of teams are switching to their own kind of streaming platform, and some of the cable news or the cable companies have realized like it's not as profitable as they thought to have these exclusive rights. So I'm wondering if teams are looking like, man, when this deal runs out, we don't know if we're getting that. What I mean, I don't know the numbers, but 10, 20, 30 million a year bonus money coming in for being televised.
No doubt. And so that shrinks the pool of teams that might have been interested in him.
Yeah.
He's the kind of guy that a smaller team might have signed to a 2-year deal to play in their outfield every day. So the Braves benefit from that because the Braves weren't looking to add a guy. But
Yeah.
Adam Duvall, they know exactly who he is. They love him. And when that price came down to that, they're almost like, we can't afford not to get
Yeah.
this guy. Why wouldn't
Yeah.
we? So
Yeah.
I asked Matzik about it. He goes, man, it's so great to have him back. He goes, it's weird how we got Duvall almost like on a discount. He goes, Matzik never bites his tongue. He says what he's thinking. He said, when they told me about that deal, I was like, wow, that's unbelievable. He's such a good player. And to get him for that, what they get him for that, I think it was kind of a shock. We just know he's a very good player, and we're excited to get him back out there and to get him to see him go out there and absolutely dominate. Duvall said going through the free agency process, because he's got a wife and 2 little kids, man. And he's working out this winter in Nashville and going up to Louisville where he went to school working out. He's got no team, so he's working out, staying in shape. He said there was a lot of uneasiness. He didn't know he was going to play. He said going through the free agency process, it just seemed like some teams didn't value the experience from proven veteran players that had a good year. So there's still some, at the time when he said this last week, there's still like a bunch of guys still out there unsigned. Still some guys out there, which is disappointing for the sport too. It goes a long way having those guys that have won before that can bring a young guy along, that can be a presence in the locker room and maybe call something out when it needs to be called out. It just seems like teams weren't really valuing that in their models and their projections. It's gotten very stat heavy and prediction heavy as far as the free agency process. But with that being said, that's what these guys do. He said the Braves, they do a good job of looking at the human being, looking at
Yeah.
what a moment can they create in a big game, the postseason. They said that's important with these guys, especially when you're playing for what we're playing for here. They do a good job of getting good character guys, winners in here.
Yeah, and we've talked about it plenty on here
Yeah.
in the past, but I mean, it's that veterans have so many things they can say to you that just click, and they're really good in the clubhouse, and it takes one conversation, like Ozuna and Harris last year.
Right.
Harris gave Ozuna credit for coming up to him and telling him how good he is, and it only takes one thing said to you from the right guy that can kind of just completely flip and turn your season around. I think teams should still value that a lot, but that's kind of the battle going on. Is there's
Yeah.
no emotion in analytics, and if you try to tell people that clutch matters or happiness matters or management matters or anything like that, nothing's looked at like that. It's just strictly numbers. I think the Braves do a good job of finding a balance in it all. I mean, they obviously use both.
Yeah. When we asked Charlie about Duvall and what he had said, and Charlie made a great point, as he usually does. He goes, I don't know. He goes, I don't know why teams wouldn't do that, wouldn't value that. I don't think it's that the teams don't value chemistry and character quality. I think that they just put a premium more and more on what they feel they can quantify. And
Yeah.
if they don't feel like the computer can spit out a number for them and get a certain outcome, that's not as predictable for them. I think a lot of teams would rather be able to go to their GM or to their president or go to their owner and say, this guy has this average exit velo, or this guy has this average spin rate. I just think that people look at the game differently. And I can understand why that is, because it's safer, because you can justify
Yeah.
your decisions easier doing it that way. But it's still a game with human beings. It's still a job with human beings, and chemistry and character matters a lot when you're going through this every single day for 6 months. So I'm sure there are a lot of really good players, a lot of position players, a lot of pitchers on bad teams that produce a lot of high quality analytic data on their performance. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure that happens a lot. But
Yep.
I think there's a lot to be said for what guys do for championship teams he's talking about. Good point.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, when you look at the World Series winners all they're talking about is the group. Nobody's like, well,
Yeah.
I'm just so glad so and so brought that exit velocity over here, and we
Right.
appreciate it so much. It's, we're a family. The winning teams are preaching that repeatedly. It blows my mind that it's such a tough sell that chemistry and all that matters when it's all players talk about. I haven't seen a single guy say, like, you know what, I hated it here, but my
Yeah.
swing got locked in.
And Alex does that better than anybody. I mean,
Yeah.
he's been around long enough. He's not an old guy. He's still young, relatively young for a front office guy. He's only in his 40s, but he's learned that through doing this for a long time with the Blue Jays, then he was in the Dodgers front office. He's just learned the value of chemistry. And now he has a manager who's an old school
Mhm.
manager. So they just got a great formula right now, and they're on the same page entirely, and everybody in the organization values chemistry so much, and that can't be said everywhere. They've won with it. They've seen the results of it, so they don't have to be sold on guys. They really like a guy, and they do the vetting because they do vetting on everybody they're going to get. And if they hear great things about a guy, they don't hesitate. They don't let something that more analytically might hold back other teams doesn't hold them back.
Yeah, and it's showing.
I just wanted to also I talked to Pierce Johnson. He's a really good dude, by the way. He's really interesting. But Eno Saris is doing something on pitchers and pitch grips, and something you've talked about before, learning them from other guys, getting a tip from this guy, that guy. And Eno had heard that Hugh Darvish, who's got, throws like
71
eight different.
pitches. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got more pitches than anybody in baseball. He's got like 8 pitches and different variations of them as well. But he had heard that he learned his spike curveball grip from Pierce Johnson. So he wanted me to ask Pierce about him, and I did. And Pierce just lit up when I asked him about it, because they were with the Padres. And I got to read you this, what he told me. He said, "You know what's crazy is I showed it to him one day, and he played catch with it. And the next day he pitched with it, and he got like 2 or 3 strikeouts on it, which is hilarious." He goes, "He's just so incredible with his mechanics that he knows them through and through. So when you learn something, he catches on pretty quick." He said it ended up being a little slower pitch than for him than it is for me. But yeah, we were in Pittsburgh. I want to say it was 21 or 22. It had to be 21, I think. And he used it and it worked. And he came in and told me after that inning, "That was your curveball. That was your curveball." So it's pretty cool. He goes, "But he's the man." He goes, "We always talk about pitch groups. We always talk about pitch groups in our thoughts and like your aiming points and finger pressure and all sorts of different things." He said Darvish was just one of those guys that, like, you tell him anything, he could try it. And most of the time he could do it. So yeah, that was a pretty cool thing. I said he's got like a half dozen pitches. And he goes, "No." He goes, "Honestly, he's got more than that because he's got variations and stuff on every one of them." But yeah, he was such a great guy and fun to watch. Just the way he went about his business was something like I had never seen before. Like every single day, he's on his iPad, pretty much from the time I saw him in the beginning of the day till the end of the day. Like he would go on scouting reports or to our little app or whatever, watch guys swings and talk about, well, back in 2018, this guy wasn't good on the cutter, and now he is. So I'll do this. And he goes, he was incredible to see. And I think it really just kind of wore off on our pitching staff that we had, how he would do those kind of things.
And that's what it's all about, and that's what we're talking about. It's just the conversations and the things that you pick up a new pitch from a teammate. It doesn't happen if you're not close and talking and hanging out, away from the field. I had something actually kind of similar happen like that with BMAC one time, and we were talking about my pitching mechanics, and I was telling him this thing I'd learned about kind of how your knee tracks when you're driving and whether it caves in or stays out. And when it stays out, kind of towards your back hip, you're able to access your glute more. If
Yeah.
you don't cave your knee in too early. And we were just talking about that, and he goes, "I'm going to try that when I hit tomorrow." So the next day he comes to me after BP. He's like, "Dude, I did that thing you were talking about. It worked for my swing. I'm going to do it in the game tonight." And his first at bat, he hits a home run and jogs around first base and points to me out in the bullpen. And I was just like,
wow.
that when that type of stuff happens, you're so happy you could help a teammate, but it's just it doesn't happen if you're not close and you're part of the team. And there's so many guys in the game that are like that. And then there's a few guys that you just can't crack the surface. Like they're just punching the clock. They don't want anything to do with anybody. And those are the guys that sometimes are the best players too. And maybe they're putting up the numbers, maybe they look good on with all the data and everything, but you bring them to a team and they wind up being a net negative because
yeah,
they just don't care about anybody. And it's
yeah.
just weird. It's weird how much that all matters and how hard it is to sell.
And just last thing, regarding the roster, the only decisions that were coming into camp that they said were really the only jobs open with the last rotation spot and a couple of bullpen spots and the last bench spot, which they had said, Alex had said speed would probably play a lot into one of those last bench spots, and it ended up doing that with Forrest Wall. But regarding the bullpen, the only question about Matzik was coming in, they met the first day of camp. They said he might need a couple extra weeks just to get some more appearances in AAA, you know, because to shake off the rust. But he's looked great, man. And
Yeah.
so he makes the opening day roster, which everybody was happy about because they love having a guy on the team. He was the guy who was in the bullpen even when he was rehabbing for a year. He sat out there some nights in the pen. That's how
Yeah.
much he's part of this team. And the other one was Dylan Lee coming off shoulder surgery. He's also ready. So those two are going to be in the opening day pen where we thought they might be in AAA, especially since Dylan Lee had options. So they end up having, because they optioned Giles, who, you know, I told you I'd have in my pen because the slider's devastating, the new pitch.
Yeah.
But they wanted Giles to go down just to throw some back-to-back innings and some multi-inning stints and build up
Little
his
more
arm
time.
strength to look. But I think Giles will be up here within a month, 2 months tops, and he's going to be a big part of. To me, he's probably going to be one of your 5 main guys in the pen. He's that good.
Yeah.
But
He's
it
been
makes
that
sense.
good.
But it makes sense to have him go down and build arm strength and get some back-to-back games and some multi-inning stints they wanted to because he wasn't there yet with his arm strength. But
And
Matzik,
he's on a non-roster invite.
yeah,
Yeah,
So
so
they
there's
could
a
do that.
roster spot and guaranteed money that, you know, comes into play too.
yeah. He had he was on a minor league contract. So they obviously had talked about that when they signed him.
Yeah.
So, but Matzik this spring, Sunday, he goes out against Baltimore. 2 perfect innings, 4 strikeouts and 2 groundouts. I mean, he's
Yeah.
come so far so quickly. The command, he was or the velo, he was up to 94.
Yeah.
I think 94, 95. So and he looks good. He looks good. So he's in there and he's pitched 5 2/3 scoreless innings this spring, 9 strikeouts, 2 walks, 2 hits allowed.
Yeah, the nice thing about him is he's got that invisible factor. You know, he's got that spin on his fastball. That fastball that when he misses middle, they still miss it. I think, you know, control is probably the thing you'd worry about with him the most. But if his
Right.
velocity's down a tick or two,
Yeah.
it never seems to matter that much when a guy has that fastball with that ride to it. You see those guys throwing 97, 98 and they're getting hit. You know, they have very visible fastball.
Right.
Guys like Matzik, when they lose a tick or two, the fastball still plays up so much that it wouldn't scare me at all. And it wouldn't surprise me to see him by opening day throwing 97 again.
Yeah, because we've seen his velo go up in big games where all of a sudden he's throwing
Yeah.
98, 99 in
Yeah.
the postseason. We're like, where did that
Yeah.
come from?
Yeah.
So he's a guy that definitely responds to the moment.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You know that about him.
And for a guy, it's crazy because he's a guy that his career was nearly ended by the yips. And
Yeah.
now he's at his best in the biggest pressure situations, which
Yeah.
just points to how complicated the brain is, man. That
You
and
know-
how strong he is to get over that and now be a guy who thrives in the biggest pressure.
Yeah, he's conquered the beast. Yeah.
Yes.
Not a lot of guys make it back from the place he went. I definitely noticed, you know, in my career, I hated pitching in stadiums like Miami or Oakland, Tampa, when I could actually hear the fans talk shit. When
Yeah.
you know, when you can hear the words people are saying and it's
Right.
quiet. I
Right.
love pitching in Philly. I love pitching at Citi Field. I love pitching in Atlanta when it was so loud. All you could do really was just focus on the and be in the moment. I think it's easier if you have that tendency
Yeah.
to get distracted or in your head. I think it's actually easier to pitch in big moments than it is in a 8-1 game. And especially, you know, in an 8-1 game, it's about me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to put up my numbers and I'm trying to get through it. In a 1-1 game or a 2-1 game where you're down 3, anything close, it's like now the focus becomes my team and winning this game. So I always felt like I performed better in those situations, even if I had a tendency to get in my own head too.
So you got that white noise, that
White
din
noise,
of noise, instead of that isolated person yelling after a 2-hour rain delay when there's
It's the
500
worst.
people left in the ballpark. Some
Exactly.
guy's yelling for the second deck. You can hear him clearly.
Every word he says, you're on the
Yeah.
mound, he's telling you you're getting on that bus to Gwinnett tomorrow, and you just walk the leadoff guy. You're like,
Yeah.
I don't
Believe
want
it
to
or
hear
not,
that.
believe it or not, writing is like that. When you are in a place
Is it?
that's so loud and you're writing, as opposed to in a press box where like there's 2 people talking behind you
Yep. Yep.
and you hear every word they're saying, and you're like, God, I don't want to hear every word they're saying.
Yeah.
You'd rather
It's same
just
concept.
Yeah.
Yep. Same concept. It's just that it's harder to, I think, to get distracted or in your head
Yeah.
when there's that white noise in the background, and it's like you get tunnel vision.
And spring training, you can hear everybody that yells
Yeah.
anything. Yeah.
Yeah. I would have this
Talking.
moment. I mean, it would happen to me every once in a while. I'd be jogging into a game and I'd just be like, what the hell am I doing? Like, this is my life. You know, it kind of like, holy crap, you know, I'm in the big leagues. It's you look up, you see yourself on the Jumbotron, and I'd start
Right,
getting
right.
overwhelmed. And I just have to get on the mound as soon as possible and start chucking before I had a chance to really think.
All right. Well, we've got just we've only got how many days? 9 days left till opening day, man.
A
They're
quick
winding it
spring.
down. Roster is set. Braves are going to play the regulars, and after the off day, Snit said the regulars will start playing every day. Now you're really getting serious and starting honing your swing and all that because he's not made the regulars make the most of the trips, that kind of thing. So now they're going to play. Most important thing, of course, as it is every spring, they got through this thing healthy. RCA got hit
Yeah.
in the hand the other day. MRI and X-rays were negative, so he's day to day, but he'll be fine. They avoided, dodged a bullet with Acuna. That could have been devastating.
Yeah.
So they've had everybody's healthy, and that's the biggest thing every year. All the pitching staff,
Yeah.
all the starters, everybody's
Step
healthy
one.
coming out of spring. Yeah, so that's all that matters. And the Braves are there. So we'll one more week of this, and then we'll take it north and get this thing going, man. Of a year, man. I think it's gonna be a great season. Phillies are tough now. I think the Braves and the Phillies might both win 100 games.
That'd be fun to watch. I would like to watch a season with a little, you know, more important games coming down the stretch.
Like the Mets
I think
season, like when the Mets were good 2 years ago.
that was fun.
That
Yeah.
season was incredible, man.
I think it's better for the team too. I think it's better to play down to the wire.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. Right, you don't want to wrap up 2 weeks ahead, especially when you're going to have that damn 5-day break.
Yeah.
And hopefully the Braves are doing something to figure out what they're going to do should they get that 5-day break again. Because the last 2 things they've done have not worked.
I don't have an answer for it,
No, it's hard. It's hard.
but
It
I'm
should
not
not. It
supposed
should
to.
not be there in the next collective bargaining agreement. It should change. They got to figure out something, like BMAC said. You know,
It's a
shorten that
disappointment.
break, penalize the team, make it hard. Well, not penalize, but make it hard for that team that's in as a wild card to
You win the
advance.
wild card game, you got to play the next day.
Yeah. And I think it should play 3 games in 2 days if that's what it takes. You have to play a
Yeah.
doubleheader on the second day if it's not settled in 2 games. Play a doubleheader.
Yeah.
Then you shorten the break before the regular series, the division series start.
Something, because I don't think anybody wants to see teams winning 84 games going to the World Series consistently.
And teams winning 100 to 105 games, getting
Going
eliminated
home,
in the division
yeah,
series.
in Cabo mid-October.
Right. All right. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate the support, and we'll get BMAC again, by the way, because the reviews were terrific for it. He was awesome guest. That was really fun, and he'll do it again soon. And hope to get Chipper on here. Chipper, if you're out there, we want to get you on here soon. And maybe Darren O'Day. I've listened to him the other day. He's gotten a lot better and really good on the doing the radio. So I'd like to get him on too. He's a funny dude. So
Yeah.
we'll get Del Murphy on too. I know everybody likes when Murph's on here, and we'll talk about things with him. So, all right. Appreciate it, everybody. 7:55 forever, and we are out.